To order, we will begin with our pledge. If you will join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte?
Here.
Commissioner Withington?
Here.
Commissioner Lawson?
Here.
Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here. That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to the approval of this evening's agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Motion's been made for the approval of this evening's agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes. That brings us to ceremonial matters. We have one issue, that is the Bicentennial Commission presentation of the new time capsule. So with that, I would like to recognize the group. Please come forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Scott Cole, and it was my honor to serve on the Bicentennial Commission. I'd like to begin by introducing the other members of the committee. Our chairman, Katie Steele Danner. Our vice chairman, Jerry Spencer. Mrs. Terry Welk, Risa Powell, Jane Putnam, and Dr. Cecilia Robinson. I know I speak on behalf of everyone for the honor of serving in the Bicentennial Commission. It's well known now we had quite a bit of problems pulling up the 1972 time capsule, and it was only with the assistance of Mr. Trip Johnson from Johnson Granite that we were able to get it out of the ground. Unfortunately, we were only able to salvage a few items out of that. So that lesson being learned, we offer a time capsule that will stay high and dry on display in the courthouse here. And I would like to ask Commissioner Jerry Nolte to step down, if he would please. We're going to do the official sealing of it. With super glue. And how they open it in 2072, who's up to that?
I don't think I'll leave it at
Close it up real quick. We just need general taps there, Commissioner.
that. I always tap you.
If you would, please. Good. Thank you very much.
I want to express thanks and appreciation to the Bicentennial Commission. You folks did a lot of hard work, and it was, Centennial was literally once in a lifetime kind of an endeavor. So thank you so much for the hard work that you put in and what you did in the county as far as the good recognition and the ability for us to be very proud of where we've come in the last 200 years and giving us the opportunity to be looking forward to the next 100 years and see where we can go from there. I'd like to get a couple of pictures. I think because this has got our commission that instituted this. So if Megan and John could come forward, we get a picture, and then I'd like to get a picture of the entire commission, if that would be okay. And if the other commission would like to come forward, we get kind of a group picture here, if that will work for everybody.
I was gonna say, can we shuffle this way just a little bit? That would be great. Much better, thank you. All right, 1, 2, 3, and one more. Thank you.
And I think those who served on this commission, so many young people, deserve certainly a round of applause for those. Yes, would you like, absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes, we're in the ceremony, so I was going to let your chair kind of take it from here as far as how we proceed.
Oh, thank you very much. On behalf of the commission, and we are going to just pause your meeting for just another moment to grab a photo. We wanted to just say thank you very much to the commission. Our work here is done. However, your work just begins. We started with 3, we've now expanded. We thank all of the staff of Clay County, all of your sister agencies, many of whom are here, who assisted us over the last almost 2 years. Our original plan was to try to revive many of the tourism efforts of Clay County as a part of this initiative. And I think we've been very successful in that, as you have been successful as well, by stabilizing that organization and joining with all of the historic sites and wonderful attractions and businesses that work in the hospitality industry here in Clay County. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to work with you. We look forward to having someone in our families be here in 50 years to enjoy what has been provided by volunteers from throughout the county. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to go ahead and ready a picture of the of both bodies. So maybe if you guys could line up here, we could maybe stand up back here. Does that sound? Whatever you guys think.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah, good. That's good.
Okay, can the front row shuffle this way?
A little excited.
Go first? Yeah. Step in front of me first, and then we'll go. Great, okay. Right here. 1, 2, 3, thank you. Commissioner Lawson, I see you now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're good.
Okay. Thank you again for all involved, and I certainly do want to include staff and those who volunteered throughout the community and those groups that participated in our bicentennial celebration. With that, we will go to our public comments. Are there any members of the public who would care to comment this evening? Seeing none. That brings us to immediate action. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 items on immediate action. We'll just go ahead and, do we want to vote on those as a group or individually? Okay. As a group? Very well. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, Administrator, tell us about each one of the items, and then I'll entertain a motion for passage.
The first item is commission meeting minutes from February the 8th at 6 p.m., followed by Resolution 2023-112, which is the approval of invoice payments from March 10th through March 27th in the amount of $2,339,235.98 for 812 invoices. Resolution 2023-111 is approving an RFP and term and supply contract with Paradise Outfitters for recreational equipment rental at Smithville Lake. Resolution 2023-116 is approving a revocable event license with the Historic Downtown Liberty for the 2023 Downtown Farmers Market event. And 2023-117 is approving a revocable license for the North American Trail Ride Conference, the 2023 Jesse James Ride Out event at Smithville Lake.
Very good. Is there a motion related to our immediate action agenda?
Yes, I move to approve all immediate action agenda items.
Motion's been made for approval, for the approval of the immediate action items. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes. That brings us to our regular agenda. First item on our regular agenda is 2023-113. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-113 is approving invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from March 10th through March 27th in the amount of $30,078.50 for 16 invoices.
Is there a motion? Are there any presentations on that, or do we have our information in our packet? We're good to go.
Information in the packet.
Okay, is there a motion related to 2023-113?
Move to approve 2023-113.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023-113. Discussion. Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
That brings us to 2023-115. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-115 is consideration of approving an agreement with Flock Safety and Clay County for the Flock Safety Automated License Plate Reader Camera System. This was presented to the Commission last week in discussion item. Captain Agdarian provided to the Commission some follow-up information this past week, answering some of the questions that the Commission had last week. She's also here this evening to provide additional information, and I know that we had requested a representative from Flock Safety to be here this evening. Unfortunately, they could not be here in person, but they are here by telephone, and Captain Agdarian will make that connection.
Very good. Please proceed.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. I wanted to begin by just very quickly giving you an example of what this Flock license plate reader technology is in light of the questions that you had the last time we met. This technology is license plate recognition that gathers objective evidence about vehicles and license plates, not people. It alerts the police of wanted vehicles as they come into the cities, as they are moving about in the unincorporated areas. They can be used to proactively solve crime, and they allow police eyes, if you will, where we can't be all the time. So we have, we've been able to greatly increase our patrol presence, but we can't be everywhere all the time. And there actually was a situation recently where Flock technology, had it been available in Kearney, may have prevented the need for a pursuit that occurred that damaged not one but two vehicles. So that is very real in my mind now, that this technology is about being proactive, looking for vehicles and not people. So what this technology is not, it is not facial recognition, it is not tied to personal information, and it is not used for traffic enforcement. So again, this is not the red light camera of old where we just rely on technology to do our job for us. You can't take the people out of policing. That's not what these cameras are for. The data, specifically to address, I believe it was Commissioner Johnson's question, the data can be stored, it's recommended that it be stored for 30 days and then written over. You had asked the question about can we keep it longer? We can. It's not recommended, but that's another discussion. So just real quickly before I get the representative on the phone, I wanted to make sure that I call your attention to the documents that I provided to Administrator Wright. Basically, it was an email from me answering the questions that I noted from you. I also included some sample policies. There are 3 policies, I believe, that you have access to. 2 of them are from Missouri agencies. One is from Viejo, California, I believe. And the reason I included that one is because it is a CALIA policy. And since we are working towards CALIA accreditation, I thought that might be a really good model for you to see what our current policy that we do have in place will look like once we format it with CALIA. All right? So that said, before I get her name is Laura Ann. I'm going to call her shortly. I want to make sure that I have addressed your questions from the last time that we met.
Are there any questions of the captain? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and thank you again, Captain. The one question that I had, which I don't think I saw answered, was related to working with Kansas City.
No, it doesn't tie into that system.
So what happens when someone leaves the county, enters Kansas City, and stays there? How do we track that plate? Or vice versa? for that
Right,
matter?
so I'm going to make note of this, and I'm going to ask Laura Ann when we call her, but to make sure that I'm going to wait until I get her on the phone.
That's fine.
Okay.
And I'm happy to pose that same question to her. So,
Okay, I believe the answer to that is going to be that, number one, the systems are not going to interface. As we've discussed, I believe Kansas City is looking at other options.
right.
I don't want to out them.
Well, I can't because I know what they're doing, but
Okay.
I won't.
So it's entirely possible that this discussion might be a moot point, but I don't know until we have, you know.
Sure.
But to your question, if we know what the vehicle is that we're looking for, or we have the license plate information, then we would just have to make a call to Kansas City, get in touch with their communications unit, and then they might have to plug in however their system works. But Flock is not integrated with what Kansas City is using, but we can still relay the information to them so that they can, essentially like picking up a pursuit when it goes out of
Right.
your area.
Well, and that's really the only thing I really care about in all this is
Okay.
how does that chain of information move? How do you go from one jurisdiction to another that may have a different system? And because at the end of the day, I mean, we talked last time about the efficacy of these systems, and I'm a believer. It's just I want to make sure that in the course of solving our issue, we don't create another issue that allows someone to slip through. So,
Absolutely.
thank
All
you.
right.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yeah, the other day, I had the great opportunity to meet with a couple of Kansas City, Missouri's finest. There are 2 sergeants that have recently retired, and they love the system. Now, you know, I know it's different than what you have, but the technology is the same. And they couldn't say enough good things about it. One of the things that I found most interesting was they have it on their cars. And they said that in high crime rate areas, they can drive through an apartment complex and immediately see stolen cars and be able to get those back. They can see people who have warrants, you know, if they have the license plate. They can find people that have warrants. So my whole thought is, instead, you know, like in the old days, what I always heard from policemen, like my old husband, was that you got hot sheets. And then you had that hot sheet, and when you were driving around, you were looking at that sheet and you were trying to find something. And, you know, now it's jumped. This technology is phenomenal. And my feeling is, why are we doing this halfway? I know money is tight, but it seems like we can always find money to spend for other things that we don't need. Why in the heck can't we say we've got 3 key cars? I'd like to find out what it would cost if we took maybe 3 or 4 cars out of the cars y'all have and equip them with cameras. And then it just opens up whole new doors for all of you and the way that you do your job. I think today this county's growing by leaps and bounds, We're seeing crime a little bit more because we have such a vast number of people moving in here, sometimes probably not always the ones we like, but, so we have to be mindful all the time. This is a great tool, and I think we quit messing around and look at the feasibility of what it would take to get a few cameras in the cars. So, that's all.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I mentioned last week, I'm a big fan of license plate readers, and I won't repeat everything I said last week, but I do have a couple of questions. Oh, by the way, I also agree with Commissioner Lawson. I think we're behind the eight ball on this. I think I would like to see them also on the patrol vehicles, but again, there's financial matters. And speaking of financial matters, I am looking at, is this a lease? Are we leasing these cameras, or are we going to buy and own these cameras?
No, we own them.
So looking at this, it shows first year for 12 cameras at $2,500 each, so $30,000. The second year, 12 cameras, $2,500 each, $30,000 again. So is this ongoing 30,000? I don't understand.
Yes, that is the maintenance, the annual maintenance to have those cameras connected to the technology, to the system, the Flux system.
Do you know what the cost of the cameras are themselves?
That I don't have in front of me now.
So that's not on the.
That is part of the one-time implementation fee. As I understand it, it's the $8,600, I believe. Because the first year is $38,600. The second year is just the ongoing maintenance.
And so every year it's going to be another 30. Every year that we
Yes.
have this.
Yes.
Okay. If I can continue that, I'm curious as to what it would be to just outright. Well, that just seems a little pricey. The ongoing expense of $30,000 a year. Will they constantly replace those cameras with new technology, or when they?
Yes, that includes maintenance of the cameras.
Yeah. Okay.
Any further questions? Commissioner Wagner.
Sorry, my colleague asked questions and then that got me into a couple more. So, but the maintenance cost is not just maintenance of cameras, it is the actual software system behind the cameras, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you are essentially buying your cameras up front, but your ongoing cost is essentially the subscription for the back-end system, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. That's what I thought it probably was. But then the other issue about maintenance of the cameras, my assumption would be that the maintenance that they would do would be everything that is remotely possible to maintain. If someone shoots a camera, for example, we're replacing the camera, correct? At our expense.
I'm going to stop us there and get Laura Ann on the phone.
Okay, sorry. I'm going down a rabbit hole and I apologize.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sheriff Will Aiken. I did want to follow up on some of the questions that you had. First of all, Commissioner Johnson, we're buying the cameras, but more and more technology that we use, they're going to a subscription base. So we are getting out of the business of owning the actual asset itself. And so when it is damaged, we have nothing to do with it. We don't have to come up with more money. The company just replaces it. And it's also the storage and the connection to the service. So that's why it's going to be an ongoing service. But we're also seeing that with the radios, with our handheld radios and other pieces of equipment in the sheriff's office. Commissioner Lawson, to answer your question about putting it on cars, it's not so much the financial aspect of it, it's more of the asset management aspect of it. If I have LPRs on cars, then what's going to happen is, if that LPR hits on a car as they're driving to a call for service, they're going to be diverted because they know that that's going on, right? So those assets are only viable if they're driving along the road, but typically when they're driving along the road, they're patrolling certain areas, which that's good, it's all part of the patrol process, but they may be very well going to someone who needs help. So if we get a hit and it's ever found out, well, why didn't you do something about it? You knew about it, you had the LPR. Well, we have a 911 call over here that we have to respond to. So Asset management on cars, yeah, I would love to have LPRs on the cars. We just don't have enough people to make it sustainable, to actually operate the way they're designed to. Not to mention, we're talking about $35,000. That's for 12 cameras. It costs that for 3 on cars. So when we're talking about how
Wait a
much...
minute, 3 for 35?
Yes,
Okay,
if it goes on vehicles.
yeah. Well,
We
I
have
don't think
20
that's out of line, but,
Yeah.
okay.
And there's more to it too. So that's just the car itself. All of the storage, data storage, right? So we're trying to transition to cloud-based because we're running out of server storage space. And the quote that we got from Axon, because that's kind of the top of the line, that's kind of like the golden standard, that they were going to charge us $2.2 million. Okay, we're working with Motorola right now with WatchGuard, and it's just under 1 million to get even more cameras to do what we need to do. I mean, the last thing that we want to do in our community is do away with the body-worn camera. So we would have to actually go to either GTAC or Axon in order to have, again, a sustainable LPR system and not just with WatchGuard. So when we talk about money, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars to outfit our vehicles, not just 1, 2, or 3. Kansas City. So we will not be able to interface with Kansas City. Same issue with North Kansas City. They have different systems. However, our communication centers, they talk directly at all times. Whenever there's an issue, a pursuit going into different jurisdictions, our PSAPs have the capability of pushing a button on their screen and talking to those dispatchers, passing all the information on. So we have that at our disposal. And really, that's kind of like the golden standard here now. But now that we're implementing the Flock system, now we're going to strategically place those cameras in certain areas. So if it happens to pass by one going into Kansas City, all we do is just notify Kansas City, give them all the information that was given to us, and they have it. And then, if they pass through Gladstone, going back into Kansas City, Gladstone has Flock. And so the areas that have Flock, they will be integrated. It's just North Kansas City and Kansas City will not be, but we still have dispatchers.
If I may.
Please, go ahead.
To that point, then, there is nothing within the agreement with Flocks that prevents you from using that information, providing that information, and vice versa. So if one had to make a case down the road, wherever that person ended up, let's say it's let's say it's a county charge, but they ended up in North Kansas City, they can take your Flock information, they can take North Kansas City's system to help show the case that this was a stolen auto and it started up here, made its way, and there's no issue using the information from both systems to make that case.
No issue at all. In fact, we can actually track where that vehicle was stolen from and where they were driving to.
Right.
So we use all of that information. There's nothing that prevents us from using it otherwise.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. I did have a question. What is the timeline between authorization from the commission and actually deploying the cameras?
I do believe we're ready to go once we get authorized.
Well, here's where I'm going with this was, once they are operational, it would be nice if we had, and it's not maybe not necessary, but I'd kind of defer to council on this one, and that is, it would be good to have our policies, our usage policies in place as soon as possible. So I was wondering at what point they would become operational. I don't think it's an immediate thing, but I would like to see us go ahead and adopt some kind of policy so that we have some protection. I think it's just a really good idea. Now, maybe I'm being overly cautious. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I wouldn't operate any kind of piece of equipment without a policy. Captain Agdarian was one step ahead of me. We already have it in place.
Good. Okay. Mr. Counselor, do you think it's necessary since they have a policy in place within the Sheriff's Department, how advisable do you think it is, or how necessary do you think it is for us to adopt one for the county? Does that cover us, or should we be looking at something?
I'm comfortable with the Sheriff's Department adopting the policy.
Very good, okay. I just wanted to make sure, like I say, just, make sure we are covered on that. Captain, you were going to comment on that?
No, I was just going to call our representative if you're ready to speak with her.
Any further questions of the captain? Please go right ahead.
All right. We're going to see how this works. All right.
By the way, while we're waiting, if we don't have a copy, could we get a copy of the policy? Thank you.
Yes,
We do have it? Sorry.
it's okay.
Hi, Laura Ann. This is Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. I'm here with our Clay County Commission, and I am going to turn this over, turn the phone call over so you can address our commission and commissioners. This is Laura Ann Holland with Flock Safety Community Affairs Division. And Laura Ann, we've just been talking about what this technology could mean for Clay County and some of our surrounding municipalities.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Captain, for including me via phone tonight. And hello to the Board of Commissioners. Thank you all for your time. I am so happy to answer any questions that you guys have. I believe that Captain went through a presentation to outline some of the questions that you guys had previously. But just to reiterate what you guys might have already covered, Flock Safety is a public safety technology company that tries to find the balance between the need to protect citizens' privacy and the need to provide data to law enforcement to help them solve crimes. And we've been able to help communities across the country have objective data that they need in order to figure out suspect vehicles associated with different crimes. So, Captain, at this point, I'm happy to help answer some questions.
Well, one of the questions that we had, Laura Ann, that I was not able to answer is, and I believe that Sheriff Will Aiken is also here, and he spoke to this, but to make sure that I understand clearly, if a camera breaks, if somebody shoots it, or if there is a natural disaster, hail damage, what is the cost to replace a camera that's already in service?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first off, if there are natural causes that cause damage to the cameras, Flock will fix those on our own. I think you might have already described this, Captain, but Flock's model is a safety as a service model. So your sheriff's office will be leasing the devices from us, which means we will maintain the hardware. We will give them access to the latest and greatest software features, all for the same flat rate cost. And so it's on us to make sure that those devices are working for all of our customers, and we are constantly monitoring the health and even proactively sometimes send out technicians before the sheriff's office or department will even know that there needs to be service. So if there's a natural disaster, we will fix it as part of our contract. If there's some kind of physical component that has happened, so if there's someone tampers with the camera, there is a small fee associated with that. And I'll pull up the fee schedule so you guys know it. I believe it comes at the end of every contract. But it's just about $500 to fix that as a result of vandalism or third-party damage. And just to let you guys know, we actually don't see that happen very often. It's really less than a dozen times, and we're in thousands of communities. Most of the time, if there is damage, we actually see it being the result of a vehicle damage. And in that instance, you typically see the individual's vehicle, right? And so you're able to file an insurance claim attached with that damage.
All right, thank you. Commission, do you have any other questions for Laura Ann? Or Laura Ann, is there some additional information that you had prepared you'd like to share?
Yeah, Captain, were you able to go through the questions that folks had from last time?
Yes, so prior to calling you, I went briefly through some of the talking points that you and I discussed when we met or when we spoke last week, and then I addressed the specific questions that the commission had from the last time we met. And I believe, Commissioner Wagner, you got the answer you needed on the integrated or lack of integration with other cameras. Okay. Okay. So yes, we are good to go at this point now. If Commission has any additional questions for Laura Ann, she's available to answer.
Are there any questions from the Commission for the vendor representative? I do have one. What is the normal life expectancy of the equipment of the camera? It doesn't have moving parts, I guess, but I'm just kind of curious as to what our expectations would be.
Laura Ann, could you hear that question?
Could you repeat it for me, Captain?
Commissioner Nolte, Presiding Commissioner Nolte asked, what is the life expectancy of the cameras?
Oh, yeah. So the life expectancy of the camera is about 1 to 2 years. It depends on a lot of variety of factors like weather, et cetera. As I mentioned earlier, we replace those cameras as part of our contract term, right? So if anything ever goes wrong with the camera or if it stops working, we will come out and replace it and give you guys the latest and greatest model.
Yep. No.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other further questions from the commission. Thank you.
Okay, Laura Ann, do you want to, is there anything you'd like to add? It looks like the commissioners have had their questions answered.
I'll add just one more piece about the way that our technology has been able to help other communities in Missouri and across the country. Our technology works in 3 different ways. There's the proactive piece where we will alert your sheriff's office anytime a stolen vehicle or a vehicle associated with a felony warrant comes into your community. And we've had other departments and sheriff's office tell us that those alerts are really essential in helping folks deter and reduce crime in the communities that they serve. Because oftentimes we as non-law enforcement people might not realize that stolen vehicles coming into a community are often associated with a series of other crimes. So individuals typically steal vehicles and then commit other crimes after stealing the initial vehicle. And so we've had customers tell us that providing those proactive alerts about the stolen cars help their departments be able to prevent and get ahead of things like mail theft and property crime, and oftentimes even violent crime that's in their community, just by simply having those alerts and being able to respond. Our system is also investigative in that it allows the sheriff's office to go back in time for the past 30 days and find vehicles, images of the backs of vehicles, right, that are associated with a particular crime. And our system requires an investigative search for every search that is done. And that investigative search reason is proactively reported to the department so that they can make sure that all of the investigative searches are in line with the cases and active investigations that the department has. And we've seen our customers be able to solve crimes that they otherwise would not have ever been able to solve because they have that vehicle information that can identify a suspect. So, Captain, you might have already covered that, but I wanted to make sure that the commission knew that the 2 different ways that you guys could be using the system if you become a partner.
Okay, thank you, Laura Ann. I believe it seems commission has the information that they need from you and I think. So at this point, if commission is in agreement, I will go ahead and end the call with Laura Ann.
Is there anybody have any objections? Everybody's got their questions answered? It would seem so. Thank you.
Okay, Laura Ann, thank you so much. I'll follow up with you later this week.
It sounds good. Thanks so much, Captain.
Okay. Well, that was fun.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing none, is there the sheriff? Okay. Unless there's someone else, is there a motion related to 2023-115?
Yes, move to approve 2023-115.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2023-115. Further discussion? Commissioner Johnson.
Just one comment on the policy. I'm assuming that it was mailed to you, but I got it last Friday in my email. And the policy, if I'm not mistaken, is the Lexipol policy. And just to be clear, Lexipol means that it's been vetted through a team of attorneys. And it's essentially a nationwide policy that thousands of agencies already use. So we're not reinventing the wheel on this. This is a tried and true, stood up in court policy that we're going to use on this.
Absolutely, and I really thank you for bringing that point up because, yes, this is our current policy with Lexipol, and Lexipol not only vets against nationwide against other agencies, but also specific attorneys specifically focused on Missouri case law vetted at the state level as well. So, it is covered. We could have been using this for quite some time. We just didn't have the technology. And this is the policy that we will reformat to CALIA standards once we get to that point in the process. So yes, this is vetted, this is defensible as it is today.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the follow-up on that because that was something I was wondering because you had mentioned CALIA and I thought some others. So I was a little confused at that point as to whether you had the policy because I'd seen that also, but I thought maybe I was not remembering it as accurately as I'd hoped. But no, that sounds like it's been vetted very well. Further, are there any other questions before we go to a vote? Commissioner Carpenter.
Not a question, just want to thank the captain and Sheriff Aiken for providing the information and the policy and everything. It's super helpful and clarifying for all of this. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, and I'll probably annoy you all again as we go into the future, but I do think we're on the cusp of a bit of a technological transformation in the years to come. And that will hit a lot of areas, but surveillance tech will certainly be one of them. And I think we'll have a small role to play in all of that as the county government, but we do have a role to play in terms of protecting our residents from misuse and that kind of thing. So, but thank you for the information. Cheers.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commission, thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain. That brings us to our next item, which is 2023-114. Administrator.
Resolution 2023-114 is consideration of approving a sole source vendor with JD Power Central Edition for vehicle value source for values for personal property. And County Assessor Baldwin is here to provide information to the commission.
Mr.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tracy Baldwin, Clay County Assessor. What this is for is approval for a sole source for the JD Power and Associates is where we get our values for personal property. Previously, it was a membership that was provided through the Assessors Association. They have changed that for the following years to where we are purchasing our own memberships. And this is based off the 137-115 statute to use the NADA, which is the National Automobile Dealers Guide value for all our values.
Okay. Are there any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2023-114?
Yes, move to approve 2023-114.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023-114. Further discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
That brings us to 2023 Ordinance 3. Administrator?
This is second reading of 2023 Ordinance 03, establishing the County Planning Commission. There was information provided to the commission at the last meeting, and also prior to that, some information was provided by the county councilor about restructuring the planning commission under RSMO 64.010 as a first-class charter county. And so the planning commission does grow in the number, and so included in this ordinance is the appointment of the presiding commissioner, the county highway engineer, the chairperson of 2 municipal planning bodies, which currently there are no nominations for those 2 positions at this time, and then 6 residents of the unincorporated territory of Clay County. And so you see those individuals listed in the ordinance with staggered terms, and these are nominees coming from presiding commissioner, and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions on 2023, any discussion on 2023 Ordinance 3? Seeing none, is there a motion on 2023 Ordinance 3?
Yes, move to approve 2023 Ordinance 3.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023 Ordinance 3. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes. That brings us to 2023 Ordinance 4. Administrator?
This is second reading of 2023 Ordinance 04, establishing the County Board of Zoning Adjustment. Again, this information was provided to the commission last week. Along with a prior meeting, County Councilor had also provided information to the commission about the restructuring of the BZA in relationship to First Class County, excuse me, with the charter form of government. Under this statute, the Board of Zoning Adjustment is 3 commissioners, and the appointments before you are Commissioner Lawson, Commissioner Wagner, and Commissioner Carpenter.
Are there any questions? Commissioner
I
Lawson?
just have one question. Can the 3 of us vote for this, or should we abstain legally? I beg your pardon? Okay.
Yeah, you can vote for it.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2023 Ordinance 4?
Yes, move to approve 2023 Ordinance 4.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023 Ordinance 4. Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
That brings us to 2023 Ordinance 6. Administrator?
2023 Ordinance 6 is an ordinance amending sections of Chapter 30 of Title 3 of the Clay County Code of Ordinances and replacing Article 1, Rules of Procedures. This has been discussed at the commission at several meetings, and at last meeting went through the proposed changes, which this particular ordinance incorporates those changes as discussed last week. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Withington, I believe you've been spearheading this and working with other commissioners. Could you go ahead and address this?
This one is actually
Well, I got the...
Scott or Jay's.
I don't want to say anything.
Mine was passed last week. So,
I'm sorry, got them
so
crossed.
I think this is Commissioner Johnson's.
Commissioner Johnson, since Commissioner Wagner has declined to comment,
Thank you,
would you
sir.
have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm real happy about this. I think 2 things that really make me happy. Number one, one of the things that I campaigned on was government efficiencies. And I think this creates even more government efficiencies. I think some of our staff sitting out here is going to have more time on their hands on these Wednesday evenings and Wednesday afternoons because our meetings hopefully won't last as long. And on top of that, I'm very happy that the invocation is going to come back in a legal manner. And I think we're going to discuss on what that's going to look like later tonight during our discussions. But I'm very pleased with this and happy with the outcome and what it looks like.
Very good. Any further discussion, questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2023 Ordinance 6?
Move to approve 2023 Ordinance 6.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023 Ordinance 6. Further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
That brings us to the final item under our regular agenda, that is 2023-118. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-118 is approving an RFP and term and supply contract for Table of 5 LLC for a floating marina concession operator at Smithville Lake, and Deputy County Administrator Coons is here to provide information to the commission.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lots of things happening tomorrow. Not only we have the Royals Home opener as displayed by Commissioner Withington, one of our campgrounds open tomorrow, but along with that season and getting ready for our campgrounds is we need to approve a new marina restaurant vendor. There is a typo on your paperwork. The correct name is Table 5. Not Tables of 5. Table 5 is the correct name for the vendor. We submitted a request for proposals, and we did have a vendor respond. There was a review committee to go through their proposed menus, hours of operations, and number of staff that they would provide to us. I'm just going to hit a few of the highlights and then answer any questions. They are planning, based upon your approval, to do soft openings starting May 3rd through the 17th to kind of work out any bugs like any other restaurant has with getting ordering systems to work smoothly, getting the staff to know where the equipment and everything is. So we would plan for May 18th as being our formal opening. Their basic hours would be Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, of 10:30 to 7 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays, those hours would be 10:30 to 9 p.m. Their proposal did propose 4 to 6 staff members, and actually, the applicants, the Dovers, Steve and Lisa, are actually present here tonight and will be available if you have any specific questions. They have indicated, we were talking earlier, that based upon how things going, that that number could go up even more, depending on how busy the season goes. Some of the things that is unique to this vendor is that they have been in business, I should probably start with that, since 2010. But one of the things that's unique about this vendor is they have also been doing a wood-fired pizza trailer that is mobile, and they have been in that business and serving various areas and events for many years. With our marina restaurant being located at Paradise Point, if you don't come from the other side of the lake to the restaurant, then you better pack a picnic lunch. So they have proposed in their proposal that on weekends, especially peak weekends, to bring out the trailer and go to the other side of the lake. So we're actually would be able to kind of double our service area, which was one of the things we found unique and very appealing about this vendor. Their proposal does include, we get a percentage, 2% of all the gross sales and $1,800 a month for operation to the county for the operation of the restaurant. Their menu, basically they met what we asked for, and that is fast food to let people get back into enjoying. So it is kind of a basic hamburger, hot dogs, tacos, nachos type menu, which is one of the things that our previous vendor had a wonderful menu, but they kept trying to expand, and then the service and the lines and the quality of the food kind of deteriorated. So we've asked for them to keep a basic menu for speed and to basically meet people wanting to go back out and boat, get the kids a quick hamburger and back out to doing what they want to do. With that, is there any specific questions I can answer?
By the way, since we are looking at a pretty tight deadline for the soft opening, I'm assuming passage tonight would be preferable.
Absolutely. They would need to order their supplies, food, get their vendors set up, and get used to delivering up at the lake.
Got it. Does anybody have any questions?
I thought somebody disconnected my mic. A quick question for you. Will they be paying their utilities, or do we pick those up?
And as part of the terms of the agreement, they help pay for water bill. We bill them for their water. There is a portion of trash. They have a trash dumpster they set, so they have to pay for the trash dumpster during the time that they are there. They also we have a location where they'll put for their grease, for their fryer grease, and they're responsible for getting it to that location and paying for the disposal of the fryer grease.
Okay. So we pick up the electricity?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. A real important, I will say that we used to go there in the past a lot, and it was most enjoyable. Really was a great evening. Will there be a band?
That is something that has always been up to the vendors, and it is their options if they want to reach out and have bands. It is not required as part of their contracts, but I can certainly let them specifically answer that question. But just to let you know, it's not a requirement of the contracts.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. And I'll ask this question because I really don't understand where this would come into play. Under Section 5, under termination, it says the vendor shall be entitled to receive compensation for services and/or supplies delivered to and accepted by the county pursuant to the agreement prior to the effective date of termination. What would be an example of something like that that the county would accept on their behalf? Or can you help me with that?
Actually, that's a term put in there through our purchasing department, and I would have to bring that information back to you.
Okay, well, I'm not, that's not a reason to stop it, in my opinion, because we have timing, but I just found that curious, and usually in a relationship like this one, I wouldn't see us as an intermediary on supplies, so just, I know we sometimes have boilerplate language, and I get that, but, and if that's all that is, then that's
Well,
fine.
I can testify that it is boilerplate language, and since I've been having Aries responsibility of the restaurants, that has never occurred
Yeah.
in my time here.
Okay, then that is sufficient, thank you very much.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, would the applicants care, or I should say the vendors care to come up and say anything? It's not required, but we certainly would welcome any thoughts you'd like to
And most
express.
importantly, I failed to mention the restaurant's name is, because the company is Table 5, is Burley's Deli. I probably should have led with that.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Lisa Dover. This is my husband, Scott. And he and I own Table of Five Catering, or Table of Five LLC. I'm going to let Scott talk a little bit about how we came up with the name Burley's Deli for you.
Sure. So that is my great grandfather's name. And so what he used to do is he would entertain. So we would come up, you go there holidays or whatever, and in their little apartment, I mean, size of this or smaller even, he would set up a complete bar in the corner. So us as kids would go up to the bar, like we're big kids, and we get Kool-Aid, we get soda, you get milk, whatever, and he'd just make it special for us, chocolate milk, whatever you want. And then, ladies would go and cook, we would go and sit around and have fellowship. And so when that continued on throughout the day and through the evening, and so when we saw the concession area, we looked at that and said, that's kind of what that should be. So we just kind of felt like Burley's would be a good name for that, and a delicatessen type food, so fresh subs, quick hamburgers, chips. We're not going to do much fried food because it's hard to get that in and out and keep a good quality of that, so we're kind of streamline that just a little bit. But our wood-fired pizza is going to be great, and so that'll set up top of the hill, and we're going to work that back and forth and kick that out, so that'll be good stuff. But your question on bands, probably going to kick back a little bit on those, but we'll probably maybe have one. I got to do a special event permit for that if I'm going to do one, so probably something around holidays, or something special. We may have something like that, but not a continual thing. Is kind of what we're thinking. But that's the name on Burley's. So anything else?
No.
Anything?
Any questions? Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you, and this is just to make sure what I heard earlier was correct. Is it Table 5 or Table of?
Table of Five.
Table of 5, so what's written here
LLC.
is correct. Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And this, Burley's will be a DBA, doing business as, and our pizza is called Tavaggio's Pizzeria, and so that's a DBA as well. So we'll get this established, and so we are kind of pressing, so. Yeah. All right, anything else?
Other questions or comments from the commission? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I will add, if any of you attend the MU games, they do also work some of the concession stands for the MU games and provide their food there as well.
Great. And is there anyone else wishing to comment on this? Seeing none, is there a motion on 2023-118?
Yes, move to approve 2023-118.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023-118. Further discussion? Seeing none, you'll recognize to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes. Very good. That concludes our regular agenda. We have 3 items under discussion. The first item is invocation, and that would be Commissioner Lawson's subject. Commissioner, if you would like to go ahead and start the discussion.
The only thing I wondered about, I noticed that in our new procedures, we did have the item that we would have invocation. I just wanted to know how, I'd like to get that started like at the next meeting. And so I wondered how we were going to handle that. Was it going to be that if one of us wished to give the invocation, that's great? If we have a police chaplain, did they want to come in and give it? I hate to pull someone in, not that everybody doesn't want to pray, but you know what I mean, that they have to give up their time. So I wanted to do it where it was least intrusive to staff, but we still had the opportunity to have the invocation. So I just wondered how everybody felt and how we should proceed from this point forward.
Commissioners Johnson and Wagner, this is kind of your, what you've been working on together. Would you like to join the conversation?
So I would suggest, first that we have our county councilor draft up some kind of legal policy that conforms with the Supreme Court's ruling on what the invocation can and cannot look like, and maybe allow outside clergy from within the county who want to come in and volunteer and take turns coming and giving an invocation with those guidelines in place. That would be my suggestion, but I'm not firm on anything.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on the way we should proceed on that? By the way, I'm assuming that it is the consensus of the commission that we do ask for at least guidelines from the council for however we proceed on this. Is that pretty much a given? Sure. Okay. Do you feel okay with that part of it, Mr.
Yeah,
Counselor?
I'm fine with that. We certainly probably should have something in play, we should have an idea of what's going to happen next Wednesday.
Okay.
And obviously, whatever I present to you won't be done before the invocation would start next Wednesday. So I think that would be something to
I think as long as we have something in motion, that's
Yeah.
fine. But I wanted to kind of settle that down before we went ahead and got into the mechanics. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Well, my history with it was in my 8 years with the city of Kansas City. How that was done was through the clerk's office making those invitations. And there was also, with their communication to area chaplains, pastors, priests, whatever, an indication of what was being sought and looked for. To kind of give an expectation of what was wanted. The city had a bank of about 8 individuals who came periodically, and not to say that it needs to be done in that fashion, but I think to the extent that we have a party, whether it is the clerk's office or through the administrator or however, make that invitation with those guidelines. I think you can come up with a pretty good group pretty quickly, and my suggestion would then be that they just rotate so that you're not continuously looking for someone new. If my memory serves, I think the Kansas City Police Department did a similar thing where they had a bank of chaplains who would then come in and be available to do that for them. I'm happy to go to those agencies and get their processes and procedures and share them if that's a way for us to get close to meeting that deadline next week. And I can do that make those requests as early as tomorrow to do so, if that would be welcome and appropriate.
Yeah, I think that would be great. No point in reinventing the wheel.
Right. I think the biggest question in all of that is where do you want that responsibility to reside? And I again, with the city of Kansas City, it resided in the clerk's office. It doesn't have to. I may look to the administrator for guidance as to how she wants to foster that. But the other pieces I'm happy to get and bring. So.
Anyone else care to join the discussion? Okay, no, I think it's really, yes, clearly it is a problem with a solution that it's not going to be too difficult to come up with. I appreciate Commissioner Wagner volunteering to do some of the research on that. So, Commissioner Johnson, do you have any follow-up? Any other discussion? Commissioner Lawson, since it was your discussion item, if you'd like to do any kind of summation before we close the discussion?
No, that pleases me greatly. Like you say, why reinvent the wheel? He already has done it. So if we could get a group of individuals who would come and be willing to offer the prayer, I think that'd be fantastic. I'd like that, yeah.
Okay. And perhaps maybe commissioners could submit names if we had somebody, or I don't know how you'd like to.
No, I think, well, I'll reach and talk with the administrator on how she wants that. I will offer to the group, knowing that we may kind of have a tight deadline for this first one. The Northland Cathedral has done that for the city of Kansas City before. And so if that is desired, just so you have one in the books and you're ready to go, I could make that overture for next Wednesday if that is wanted and desired.
I think so. There's no problem with that with anybody on the commission? Very well. Yeah, please make that.
I'm just not going to make it a habit, that's all. So.
You are now in charge of.
I'm in charge for 1 week.
Very well. Thank you, Commissioner Lawson. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and end the discussion. Very well. That brings us to the second item on our discussion. That is Mark 911. And that is also Commissioner Lawson. So Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you to begin the discussion.
So, last week, when we had the situation of money that we had to approve for to subsidize the 911, and I realized this is going to be a monthly thing here, it kind of surprised me. And so I did some investigation, found out that at the end of last year, we had a shortfall, and $50,000, I believe it was, had to be appropriated. However, we had that kind of in an extra account. We were able to utilize that money to go ahead and meet our obligation at the end of the year. But now, after I got this huge spreadsheet here, and I don't know what I always thought, how I thought this was taken care of, but I wasn't as familiar with the 911 database and our obligation. Mark administers it, and I talked to a gentleman at Mark who is in charge of it, and he said he has a staff of 16 people that administered this thing. 16 people. But it's for a lot of counties. It's for Cass, Clay, Atchison, Jackson, Johnson, Leavenworth, Miami, Platte, Ray, Wyandotte, Lynn, plus Excelsior Springs, and so it's all of that they have to administer. They allocate what we pay by what percentage of the total population is us. And so it turns out that Clay County is 11.40. And so consequently, because of that, I want to make sure I hit the right button here, $1,264,733 a year. Now, when you think about how overwhelming that is, it probably isn't a bad number, and our percentage isn't that ridiculous compared to, say, Jackson County that's over 3 million. So the thing that I wanted to see was, why in the world are we having to subsidize this? And I find out that how this is allocated, this money, is by home phones, which are becoming quickly archaic. I have a home phone because Southwestern Bell gave it to me for free when I retired. Otherwise, I wouldn't have one. Everybody I know has cell phones. So I find out that, like, I took Jackson County as an example. They went to cell phones, charging the cell phones. They charge $1 on every cell phone in Jackson County. And I mean, I'm sure they have extra money hanging out there. So I wondered why we couldn't go ahead and look at the feasibility, maybe not $1, we can come to some good agreement, but why we couldn't go ahead and look at the possibility of going to the cell phones. Well, the more I investigated, I found out that there is, as there always is, a darn statute that monitors this. And on that wonderful statute, it addresses what we can and cannot do. But one of the things it does speak to, it says, let's see, let me go back up here. All providers of emergency telephone services defined in blah, 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 public safety answering point operations within the county are consolidated into one public agency as defined in a section. That provides emergency telephone service for the county or such providers And it also says that we can change this if we have entered into a shared services agreement for such services. Well, I didn't know, and I want to go to our illustrious county councilor and see if, does that mean we've already entered into an agreement for the whole group, or does it mean what our sheriff is now doing, which would incorporate us with Gladstone and possibly Liberty, maybe others down the road? So do we have, and we can't, the other side of the coin of this whole darn thing is, it has to go on a ballot. So we have to put it on a ballot, and I don't know if that means if there were some city election in the interim, or it means we wait till next November or the primary, and we could have the ability to put it on there, which gives us a lot of time to look into how we want to do it, what percentage we want to affix to it. But the fact that we're having to subsidize this to the tune of, I have to ask the auditor, was it $40,000 a month?
Yeah, it's about.
It's about $1 million a year now is where we're at. So the landline revenues bring about $250,000, and our obligation to Mark this year went up 20% from last year, and it's $1.25 million. So that's where we're at. And if you do the quick numbers on what Commissioner is proposing on, $1 a phone, if we have 250,000 people, how many people have phones, you can see we could, solve that pretty quickly. And I think that would free up $1 million a year. So it could have a very, positive financial impact for the county.
Yep.
So is that $1 a phone a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So even if we did 50 cents, but the thing is, you probably want to do it once and do it right, and everybody keeps growing in Clay County, and we've got more cell phones, and before long, kids 5 and 6 years old are all going to have cell phones as well. So, it's just overwhelming how many cell phones are out there. And this would, and we want to do this for public safety, of course. That's the paramount whole deal here. But we don't want to go in the hole. And, it seems like we're constantly being drained by one thing or another. So why not do this if this is, Jackson County did it, and the gentleman there said they did not do one thing. They didn't have announcements, they didn't send out flyers, they did nothing, and they got over 51% of the vote, and it went right through. So I think if people understand why we're doing it, and I hate to see us be pouring money that we could use for something else and pouring it into the 911, although it's something we have to do. So anyway, that was all that I had to say about that. I'd just like to see what other people feel, and if we could proceed, and if our county councilor would investigate this a little bit and see what we have to meet in that state statute to be able to proceed with this as cell phones, and then ultimately be able to put it on the ballot.
Let me address one part of that, just as a timing issue. You mentioned the elections, when it would go on. We actually have the August and November elections are available every year typically. We just don't typically use them. So if we did choose an odd year August or November ballot, we could do that. We would bear the entire price of that election. So I wouldn't say it would be cost prohibitive, but it would be costly, which is why we typically would piggyback on some other election that is already happening.
So we could piggyback it on next year's election,
Yes.
and then it would be no expense to us if we
Well,
did
there'd
that.
be an expense. It just we wouldn't bear the entire burden of the election.
Okay, all right, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And I knew that would happen, that we would have to pay, and I didn't want to see us do that, So, but anyway, we've got some time. I didn't want to wait until a month before next year's election. I thought let's bring this forth and see what we can come up with and what we can do. So if you check those statutes and see if we're going in the right direction, if there's something else we have to do, then.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's something we should look into, especially if we can free up 1.25 million. I mean, our roads are really bad, and if we could start taking that extra $1 million and putting it towards our infrastructure, you know, we all campaigned on public safety and infrastructure, so I think that's worth looking into, and especially if we can free up some money for our infrastructure.
Yeah, I agree. Most of us can remember life before smartphones and can't imagine life without them right now. And some of us can remember life before 911 and can't imagine life without 911 right now. So that's never going to go away. So we're going to have to fund these different things. And what we're looking at is not trying to make more money. We're trying to prevent from losing money that we have been making. And because it was tied to the landlines, and landlines are going away, most people don't have landlines anymore. Everybody's got a smartphone or cell phone. It only makes sense to transfer that over somehow. And what that looks like, I don't know. What that cost is, I don't know. But again, it's not to be a big money maker. It's just so we're not losing what we had, so that we can meet our goals here with 911. So I'm in agreement. We should look into something like that.
Excuse me. One of the things that I think I was talking to one of the other commissioners, was that we are funding that's to say, as a government, we're funding something that has an increasing cost with a decreasing revenue stream, because the example I think that I talked about was if you were to take a White Pages telephone book from say 1990, put it on this counter, and then you were to put one contemporary, if they even publish them, you would see it, that illustrates the dramatic decrease in that particular usage of that particular kind of device. Excuse me, Sheriff, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, thank you. Just to kind of put things in perspective, when I first got involved with the 911 board at Mid-America Regional Council over 10 years ago, we were roughly paying about $600,000, and we were supplementing that with landline usage from a bill that was passed in 1993. The $1 was set as a maximum amount in statute when the bill was passed, I believe in 2018. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's not just for cell phones. It's for any smart device with mobile capability. So that could be iPads, it could be anything, iPhones now, or iWatches. So just keep that in mind. So it's not just cell phones. But in 10 years, we've increased by 50%, and technology is not going to stop. The radio system and the 911 system, they go hand in hand, and we know that the technology always improves. And next thing you know, we're having to put a $100,000 piece of equipment about this big in one of our towers. Well, if you look at all the PSAPs in the KC metro area, which I didn't realize that we've added Lynn County, Atchison, and all of them, that's several towers. I think that's over 20 towers now. So you do the math. I mean, those things are always going to come up. So I just wanted to kind of give some context and some history about the last 10 years for us. Oh, and by the way, Clay County, the reason why we have to pay $1.2 million is because we pick up the tab for all the cities within Clay County. The cities don't pay their portion. And the reason for that was the agreement passed decades ago. So definitely wanted to throw that in there. That's the reason why it's so high for us.
One of the things the sheriff points out, I think, is one that is a good one. When I was in the legislature, this issue came up, and I don't know, Commissioner Carpenter, if it came up during your time in Jefferson City, but it was this, defining what devices were being taxed. Is a telephone, is a tablet a telephone? It seems to me like one way to define it would be, does it have the ability to access 911? But for the many mysterious reasons, a lot of things happened down there. There was never really, at least while I was there, an agreement on exactly what that definition is. I would suggest that as we go, if we decide to go forward with this, that we make sure that we have a definition for what kind of devices would be taxed that would be both effective and defensible. Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. Yeah, I did, as Sheriff Ake had mentioned, passed it in 2018. Was down there at the time. Many hours of discussion on it. I was happy to support it, and the Sheriff and I have talked about it a little bit in the past, and I would be happy to support it again. I will say, if you're saying it only passed in Jackson County with 51%, I think it would be fair to assume that it would be slightly harder to pass in Clay County than in Jackson County. And so I do think if we're gonna go in that direction, it's gonna take a lot of strong advocacy out there from people like the Sheriff, I think, to make sure it passes. So just a thing to consider. Thanks.
That is a good observation, Commissioner, yes. Further discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Lawson, if you'd like to round off the discussion?
No, I just, I appreciate everybody's feedback, because this was all new to me, and I was calling anybody I could think to call and try to get enough information to sound halfway intelligent talking about it. But I appreciate the extra input, and I'm looking forward to information from County Councilor and see how we can proceed. And I think that John, you're completely 100% right. We may have, that may take a little selling, but we can do that. We're politicians. Thank you guys very much.
Well, we
I
all
appreciate
managed to
it.
get ourselves elected, now didn't we?
Yeah.
Mr. Sheriff, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just thought about what I said. I said it's increased 50%. No, it's doubled. So it's increased 100% in the last 10 years. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No problem.
I do know how to do math.
Okay, that will conclude our Mark 911 discussion. That brings us to our third discussion item, and that is commission meeting dates for the remainder of the year, and that is from our administrator.
Thank you, Commissioners. So included in your packet is a listing of all the Wednesdays for the remainder of the year. And since we just had a month that had a fifth Wednesday, and you all had decided on which Wednesday to not have a meeting, I thought it might be worthwhile to take a look at the rest of the year. And it helps us from staff when it especially comes to scheduling items in which we have guests that come to the commission meetings. I'm sure it also helps you with your scheduling. So included on that list is the April meetings, the May meetings. There are 5 meetings in May, 5 Wednesdays. And we had proposed not to have a meeting the last Wednesday, that's May 31st. We've already heard from 2 commissioners who are not going to be here for that particular meeting. Have already scheduled conflicts since it is a 5th Wednesday. It's also right around Memorial Day holiday. So we throw that out as possibly not scheduling a meeting on May 31st. If you go down and continue, June and July both have 4 Wednesdays. But when we get to August, August is another month that has 5 Wednesdays. And so I also provided to you some research about when the schools are back in session, because you may want to choose to pick a Wednesday in the first part of the month before school starts, for those that want to spend some time with their children. I will say August 23rd is one of the Wednesdays, and that's one of the first day of school for both Liberty and Excelsior Springs, so you may not want to do it the first day of school. So we'd like some feedback on that. September has 4 Wednesdays, October does, November has 5 Wednesdays. And so we're proposing for you to not hold a meeting November 22nd, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That would be the Wednesday not to have a meeting. And then the practice of the commission is not to have a meeting the Wednesday between Christmas and New Year's, which would be December 27th. So we throw that out. Certainly would like to have your feedback. And if we could get some direction on these months that have 5 Wednesdays, then we can plan accordingly.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I would point out that with the changes that we've made related to the ordinance that we passed tonight, it seems to me, or I'll say it this way, I'm not sure I understand why we would need to meet 4 times in a month. And I'll bring up July as an example. The 4th of July is on a Tuesday. And I don't know about anybody here, and I'm not sure I'm going to be out of town for the 4th of July, but I just throw out there that when you have, you have holidays like that are traditionally travel holidays, I just throw out to the group with no recommendation out of the way, is there a reason why we have to meet 4 times in July? Especially based on what we've just passed this evening. If we can conduct business any Wednesday, then so there's my question. I'll just leave it at that.
So if I could address that, really, there's not, right? Because now going forward, everything's a business meeting and we can get things quicker on the agenda for the commission. However, I will say one of the things that goes on your agenda is the approval of vendor payments. And so if we have gaps, then we have a longer gap of paying our vendors, the way that our code is structured. So that's really the only direct impact that I can see if we have long gaps between meetings.
But can we not anticipate those payments and put them on the prior week?
We certainly, that's why actually you all got an updated agenda on Tuesday, because it's the end of the month and we were trying to accommodate and get, we close, we process, we give you the list for the agenda. And so we modified it this time because of the end of the month, and we wanted to catch up and make sure we got all the vendors this month paid as we could, because we have to wait for the month to close to start the process. So we can anticipate as much as possible, but in our process, we have to have the invoice in place, and there are processes that has to go through.
Yeah.
So we have a cutoff, and we produce that list with everything that we have that's been approved at that point in time. But there's going to be a gap.
Well, my, and not to belabor it, but I don't see the magic of 5 Wednesdays, and somehow that week, or maybe there is some magic to it. If for example,
you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
When we don't have a meeting on the 5th Wednesday, wherever that is, then it is a longer period of time not to pay vendors.
Right. So to me, it's just a matter of, if I can forecast out for the rest of the year, here's what we're doing.
Right.
Then you can make some adjustment to it. I guess that's my point, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think Commissioner Wagner is right. The magic, so to speak, was 4 meetings a month when we don't have that because the vote has been taken. But we had the 2 different kinds, so it kept it even as we went month to month. So that was the reason which no longer applies. Something I wonder about, and it's a little off track in a way, but is it possible, and it's not a very great comparison, but in the legislature they have technical sessions. Would it be possible for us to look into the idea of, say, for that week, that first week in July, is it possible for us to have essentially and it is a terrible term, it's not the one I want to use, but would it be possible to have a remote Zoom where we could just have a single non-controversial item, which would be, say, for instance, approval of the expenditures? That way we could do it via Zoom. I realize I'm kind of proposing something kind of off the cuff here that is a little bit different, but in a way that would maybe resolve some of that. The other option would be if we could put some kind of a resolution together as needed, where the commission, I don't like this one much, but I'll just say it, could delegate that responsibility either to the presiding or to the staff or whatever to approve those expenses. I'm really not very fond of that, but if there was some way that we could, on a very as needed and not a very frequent basis, be able to do where we had a meeting just for that, and because we don't have to worry about being thrown out of sequence again as far as work and business sessions. So I throw that out there not as necessarily a suggestion, but just as some food for thought. Commissioner Johnson, I think you would like to speak?
Yeah. So first I'll admit I'm a little confused. I'm not sure what we're trying to fix. The new ordinance that we did pass says that we will typically hold 4 commission meetings each month. Nothing restricts us to Wednesdays. If something falls on a Wednesday, whether it's a holiday or something else, and we want to move it to another day other than Wednesday, we can certainly do that. But I would be real leery of doing less than 4 a month, unless it's extreme circumstances or something. But just because we're a big county and we got things that need to be done, and no sense in us holding things up just because We don't want to meet a certain day. We can always be another day. And there's going to be times when one or two of us may be gone anyway, whether it's vacations or something else. That's to be expected. But I'm not sure what I guess I didn't understand what Commissioner Wagner was trying to get at with less than 4 meetings.
Sure. No, the question is, the question that I pose is just simply, even though it says typically, because in one of my drafts of that ordinance, I said minimum of 2, maximum of 4. All I'm really asking or looking for is there a desire to have more flexibility within scheduling for whatever reason? And if the answer is no, okay. If the answer is, yeah, actually, because of the way things fall, we would like more latitude, but if we want to stick to the 5th, wherever we have 5th Wednesdays, it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other to me. It's just really more of a question of how flexible can we make our schedule, because it may be, we don't mind meeting 5 Wednesdays in a particular month if we can have Thanksgiving week away. You know what I mean? So it's really, we seem to be tied into, well, we have these 5 Wednesdays. That worked very well when you had that sequence of pairs of Wednesdays, but now that's gone. So I just pose the question of, do you want to stick to how we did that, or do you want some flexibility so that when everybody's off, we're off too, but I'm not going to say one is better than the other. I just ask the question of, is flexibility desirable? That's about it.
One of the other reasons that we kind of fell into this particular pattern, as Commissioner Thompson will recall, was our meetings were on Mondays. That was particularly problematic for the holiday 3-day weekend. So that kind of pushed us, and we've been sort of following that, for whether that makes sense or not. We began following that pattern when we switched to Wednesdays. Clearly, a 3-day weekend was not going to impact a Wednesday. I think it's worth looking into. But yes, just to answer your immediate thing, for instance, if on that particular week in July, the first week in July, if we chose to meet on a Thursday or Friday to be accommodating for those who might have July 4 travel plans, that might be something to do. My thought is to kind of go forward with what we've got, because right now we are set. We have our schedule pretty much in place for May. Is that not correct, Administrator?
Correct.
So the next option is not for some time, August, I guess. So we've got, since May is kind of taken care of on its own, we could, although we do need to plan ahead. I think that's a really good point.
Well, I don't know that May is actually, determined. I mean, we threw that out because we know that there's at least 2 commissioners, and we know it's a holiday weekend, and there's 5 Wednesdays, and felt like you could conduct your regular 4 meetings. But it's certainly up to the commission whether you want to meet on May 31st or not. But we throw that out, and then the next one would be August. I would say, for the July 5th, I understand that it's the day after the 4th of July holiday, and so you may want to move that meeting to Thursday. And it would be a 3 o'clock meeting, so you may want to have it on Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I would encourage the commission to try to keep the meetings on the same day every week, because right now we vary in time. But if you start changing days of the week, then for transparency and for the citizens to know, is it, I came because it was Wednesday, but oh no, they're meeting on Thursday. Now, we'll do our best to communicate if a meeting is moved to a different day of the week. But I would encourage you to try to stay to some kind of consistency in your regular meeting schedule.
Okay. Further discussion, Commissioner Withington.
Well, we're talking about flexibility. I would like to ask the commission, would you guys be flexible with moving all of our meetings to 6 p.m. instead of 3 and 6?
I don't have like a big head of steam. One of the ideas behind moving the times 1 to 3, 1 to 6.
Yeah, I remember. I understand why you guys did it. But some of us have careers that have changed in the last 2 weeks. So, Yeah, so, I was just, we're talking about flexibility, so I thought I'd throw that out there. See what the commission thought about that?
I could, I don't have a real head of steam up either way. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm certainly willing to go with whatever the commission wants to do. Does anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to express?
No, just that I would be fine with that change if it better accommodated everybody's schedule, including yours. And I'm flexible with whatever decisions everybody wants to do. We can make it work on my end for sure.
Commissioner?
I'll chime in as well. No, I'm very open for flexibility, and as a commissioner that has had issues with scheduling and children and home life, I'm very open to bringing it to a 6 o'clock meeting as well. I think that would be very transparent for them. All the public could still be able to attend. It's after work, and if we needed to do special meetings on a different time, I'm open to that too. So, what we have right now, kind of set and proposed tonight, I'm very comfortable moving forward with this.
Yeah, this schedule looks good to me too. Just if we can move them to 6 o'clock, I think that'd be great.
Administrator, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a consensus from this discussion to go forward?
Well, certainly we would like to know what dates, if we could hone in on that, if May 31st is, you want to have a meeting or not have a meeting. In August, is there a date that you would not want to have a meeting? Are you good with not having the meeting the day before Thanksgiving and then the December meeting also? Because that will help us as we schedule out, especially our planning and zoning. We have to advertise so far in advance for those items that come before the commission. So it really does help us know and helps us with the applicants as we can walk them through the process. And then with regard to whether the commission wants to change all the meetings to 6 p.m., you just need to let us know if and when you want to do that and when you want that to start.
Two of the things that occur to me that we should be taking into consideration, apart from the obvious of making ourselves available to the public, but as far as within the commission goes, it seems two of the considerations that I think carry a good deal of weight, and that is those commissioners who have an employment obligation outside of these walls that would be impinged by a 3 p.m. time. The other thing, and that is more related to the scheduling of whether or not we meet 4 or 5 times, and that would be as it related to, just recently related to, I think, spring break, and then in August with kids going back to school. So I think those commission members who have children who are in school, that's another consideration I think that we should factor into our thoughts on this. I don't have a real strong, we got to do X or Y right now, and I haven't really thought it over that much, quite honestly. But if we do something where we're changing days or times or whatever outside of the traditional dropping a 5th meeting a month, which is kind of in the mix, I think what we need to look at doing it far enough in advance so that we can notify the public adequately. What that notice time is, I don't see that as a specific number of weeks, but should we opt to go for a consistent 6 p.m. time or any other change of that sort or a different date, the further in advance we could do that for the public, that would probably be better. Like I say, I don't have a really strong opinion on that, but I'd certainly be willing to hear what the commission says. Commissioner Withington, excuse me.
Yeah, so I think we already have 3 p.m. next week, right?
Yes, next week is 3 p.m. and April 12th would be 6 p.m. And I think we have planning and zoning on the 5th or the 12th? The 12th.
Okay, so then can we start April 12th on moving the meetings to 6 p.m.? I think we had enough people that said that they would support that.
We don't, let's discuss that, but before we do, I want to make sure that when we can make that decision now, if we want to. It's not a change of ordinance, it's not a change of resolution. Am I correct in that as far as?
I don't think we put the time in the ordinance.
Are we?
Yeah, there's no time specific or day in the ordinance.
That's what I was getting at. So we have a little more flexibility in the action of the commission, although we should obviously exercise some restraint in using that freedom. Commissioner Johnson, I'll get to you.
Yes, I certainly want to be sensitive to Commissioner Withington's situation, but I want to be even more sensitive to the public. I know a couple weeks ago, we had some conversations about the times and the current 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and how that was designed specifically for the public so that people that can't be here in the evening or the afternoon and vice versa can attend. So I would certainly want to get some input from the community if there's, although I don't see a whole lot of community members that really show up here at 3 or 6 o'clock. I don't know if that's different on the streaming or not. So I would certainly want to have some input from the community if it matters to them. Secondly, I'd like to have input from the staff because to me not only is the community important, but the staff's important because it's going to have impact on your staff, whether we meet at 3 or 6 o'clock. So I think that's important. And if we're looking at changing times, I think we should look at is Wednesday the day we want to stick with as well. Because if we're looking for inconveniences, it's inconvenient for me on Wednesday nights. So maybe it's a more holistic approach. We need to look at everything. Wednesday nights is my church night, so I don't get to go to church on 2 nights out of the month because it starts at 6 and 7 o'clock. So if we want to look at a more holistic thing, with input from the community, I think is really important. Input from the staff, and certainly being sensitive to not only Commissioner Withington but everybody else. I don't have a job, so but I think we need to be sensitive to everybody on this, and I wouldn't want to rush this too quickly. But at the same time, I don't know all the details of your situation. I know you're starting a new gig, so but those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good points. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Well, I do appreciate one of those comments from Commissioner Johnson, because I've got 2 jobs and then this, and so fitting everything in becomes its own issue. But beyond that, I do think that any sort of change that we make, you got to have 2 or 3 cycles through, in my opinion, so that the person who didn't happen to catch that Wednesday has a chance the next go around or whenever they get it to see that and see some notice has occurred. So I do understand the desire for change, and that we've talked about flexibility tonight, so I appreciate all these points of flexibility. But I do think wherever we land, you got to run it through 2 or 3 times, I think, so that people have had a chance. If they missed the meeting where it was announced, they're back for another meeting for that announcement, and people understand that that it just didn't suddenly happen, because people always seem to have the thinking that they missed an announcement, therefore it suddenly happened. So running it a couple, 3 times, I think would be important.
Further discussion?
Yeah,
Commissioner Withington.
I wouldn't have a problem moving from Wednesday night to accommodate you either. So we could talk about that. I'm good with that.
Since we all have our issues, is there a collection point where we can send those things? I don't know who wants to be the doodle poll out there, but it does.
I nominate Diane.
Well, I knew that was coming.
getting a look here.
I knew it was coming, but I wanted hope sprang eternal there. But everybody's got their conflicts, right? I've got them, you've got them, you've got them, everyone's got them. I do think that, at the end of the day, we all agreed to what we agreed to when we took the job. That's kind of the default, in my opinion. But if we can communicate those scheduling issues.
How about, because it will be difficult with all 7, because you're right, everybody's got different schedules and needs. How about I send out sort of, you said a survey, right? And we'll have days of the week, and you give us your first, second, and third choice. I'll compile all that data and let you all know, this one got the number 1 votes, number 2, and number 3, and bring that back to you all to decide about a day. And then I can also do something about, do you want it to be 6 o'clock going forward for every meeting, which doesn't sound like most people were, but we'll start there. I would encourage, and maybe, I'll weigh in, and when I give you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I will probably black out Monday because so many holidays are on Monday. That would be a day I would not recommend. So if we're moving from a Wednesday, I would suggest Tuesday or Thursday, right? So, not a lot of choice, but we'll get that out to you all and compile the data and, get that back for you to discuss at next week's meeting. If everybody responds back.
Yes.
As quickly as
Commissioner
possible.
Johnson.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, I still think it's really important, of course, get the input from the commission, but I think it's real important that that the community has some input, as well as staff. That's all.
By the way, one of the, and maybe administrator could maybe add a little bit to this, but one of the reasons for Wednesdays was it allowed time for packets to get to commissioners. There was sometimes when we were doing Mondays, the weekends were intervening, and that was a little bit of a complication. So we'd also like to hear what staff's thoughts would be.
Right, and typically we've made a very conscious effort to get you packets and post the packets for the public on Fridays. Because then we felt like that gives the commissioners a weekend and the public a weekend when, they're not fighting their other obligations to go out and read the packet and get the information and get back with staff if you have questions. Certainly, we're still going to strive for that. So moving it from a Wednesday to a Tuesday, I don't know that that will have an impact. Now, what it will impact is sometimes we do an amended agenda for you all where something will come in at the last minute, and as long as we're within that posting notice that we can amend the agenda by, I think, on Tuesday. So that will change a little bit. So, we also, as staff, will be as flexible, and, once the decision is made, we will look at our processes and see what we need to do to accommodate whatever the decision is.
Well, that's a good point, and I know staff will. And like I say, I was that's what I was getting at, was that that extra day, that Monday, allowed for, if there was some good reason for an amended agenda, that still allowed time for everyone to have some ability to review that and to understand what was going on. And I think it lent more flexibility, more transparency with our public.
I would say for Commissioner Johnson, from a staff perspective, having 4 night meetings a month is a little daunting for staff. That's usually, from a municipal perspective, you usually only have 2 night meetings a month. And then when we have our planning commission staff that meet on a monthly also, then they've got another night meeting on top of that. So again, we will accommodate whatever the commission's desire is, but it does have an impact on staff.
Do we need to make any kind of a decision this evening related to the month of May, or, because you said that we'd kind of indicated, but did you need some feedback on May since that's coming up?
At least May, since it's coming up, so that we can plan accordingly for projects. Is it the desire of the commission to have or not have a May 31st meeting?
Yeah, I'm fine with not having a 31st meeting.
You don't want one? I think there's consensus that we will not meet on May 31st, so at least we've got that 5 Wednesday month figured out. Very well. Is there any other discussion to be had on that? It sounds like staff will be on top of that, and we will be hearing more on that issue. That ends our discussions. That brings us to our county administrator comments.
Thank you, commissioners. And if I could just backpedal just a little on Commissioner Johnson's request on feedback from the community. That is a little bit difficult for us to do, but I think what we may do is put some information on social media and maybe have encouraged the public to respond from that perspective with regard to days and times. I don't really have a mechanism at this point.
And maybe you already have a little bit of the pulse of the community. I don't know. Maybe your staff does. Maybe the presiding commissioners. I don't know. Some of them have been here longer than I have. May already have a pulse on what the community cares about in terms of when we have these meetings. I just don't know. And I just want to make sure that we don't leave them out, because they're obviously the most important out of all of us. So that's just my only concern. And however you guys figure out how to do that, I think is fine. And social media is great.
We'll try and get some. Obviously, it's
Yeah, like I say, most of them might not even care. I don't know, but.
Yeah, we will do that. And I think one thing that really helps is, as citizens come to us, whether it's a formal process like planning and zoning, or they want to speak to the commission, it's our ability to help them know the dates and times and when to come. So we'll put something together and provide information to the commission. And then my only other item is the next meeting, which, based on your adoption of the ordinance earlier, it will be a business session on April the 5th at 3 o'clock here in the chambers.
Very good. With that brings us to commissioner comments. We will start with Commissioner Carpenter. We'll mix it up a little bit.
No comments, thanks.
Commissioner Thompson, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Withington. Commissioner Lawson, Commissioner Wagner.
Go Royals.
Succinct and to the point. Given the hour, I have no comments that I would care to make at this. Oh, no, I do. Excuse me. I'd almost forgotten. I wanted to acknowledge, as we do in these comments, when Clay County citizens accomplish things and when they do well. And this particular person is also a member of the Clay County Health Boards. Dr. Lancer Gates, who is a member of the Clay County Health Board, put in place by this commission for an unexpired term, is about to be installed as the Missouri State Medical Association president. And so that will be done this weekend coming up. So I think it's a great honor that one of our local people will be installed as the president of that association. Further on that point, he has brought on board as a vice president Dr. Jim Durena, also a Clay County resident, and also he is the president of the Board of Healing Arts for the state of Missouri. So we have two outstanding Clay Countians who are about to take on more responsibilities, and I think we can be proud that Clay County citizens are taking a role in the state associations in which they are involved. That brings us to reports. I think we have one report.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, there is one report presented to the commission, and that is from our county auditor. Per statute, whenever there's a change of an office holder, an internal audit is performed, and the auditor did an audit of the prosecutor's office, and you have that report in your packet.
Very good. If there is nothing else, that brings us to recess and adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.